Well, somebody has to say it. Dennis Kirkpatrick, my guest today, is what you would call a titan in the industry, but he's not going to say it because he's too humble. He joins me today on the On to Something podcast. I'm Bryan Fenley, a national anchor at Fox Sports Radio. And Dennis, of course, is currently the director of broadcast productions and operations with the Big West. He has worked in sports television production for multiple decades just to show the grasp he has on the business. And this is going to be an opportunity to highlight what he has done in his career, but also how he inspires others. And that's where I want to start here. Dennis, I appreciate you doing this. And for as many big events as you've worked on, and of course, you have been with the Pac-12 conference for a long time, and Fox and CNN and beyond. What is the thrill for you in being able to go above and beyond the normal responsibilities of giving back and seeing those who you mentor thrive?
Well, two things. One, I'm not going to quote unquote shine in this thing. So I survived, to be honest with you, and part of it is that I really enjoy some. I've worked for the people I trained, and that's not unusual in the corporate world today. I've worked for some of the people I've trained, and it's actually proven to be a good thing. And I love teaching. I'm not big on academia, but I love teaching and being able to pass along what I'm doing. And it's such a changing environment. A lesson that I learned when I actually was an assistant SID at USC, and I was Tim Tessalone, who's getting ready to retire after 40 years. Tessalone and I were the assistants together. And then I left for CNN, and he ended up getting the job. I keep telling him, "You're damn lucky I left, Tessalone, because I was yeah." He was actually the perfect man for the position. But I really enjoy passing things along.
What do you get, Dennis, from teaching that you don't get from being in a production truck and putting on a broadcast?
Oh, when you get in a production truck, I mean, if you don't get excited about that, then I'm going to take your blood pressure and apply CPR or something. I enjoy that as much as anything else. But I remember I'm doing a game down in Auburn once, and we had their AD, and they actually judge you on your performance and how you handle the kids. But I remember a kid's doing a replay, and she goes, "Well, God, is that all right?" And I said, "Remember, if you take it back to a certain point and make sure that it knows." And the AD next to me goes, "Well, God, are you just going to explain that to her? Are you going to?" I went, "Nah, hell, it's fine. There's going to be other replays in this game. This one teaches her a lesson, and that's what you want to do. You want to teach what you're able to do, and not everything in sport. While sports television has things it needs to achieve, it also has lessons that you can teach, and being prepared is one of them. Knowing what you're going to do, being able to get along with people, grasping the situation, knowing what's right and wrong. I'm with a student yesterday, and I said, one of the things this internship I want you to find out is whether or not this is right for you. And she goes, "That's what I'm learning." And it is. This young lady is terrific, but she just doesn't know if this is what she wants to do. And whatever she decides to do, she will be successful at it.
When did you know that being in this field was right for you?
When I was broke after and I was a reporter at CNN, and I got fired there. So it's either survive or work behind the camera, and that's what I ended up having to do. It wasn't something I'd planned on, but it just evolved.
Why do you think that even though you didn't plan it, that you made it work the way you have?
I was having to keep a mortgage in Manhattan Beach, California, and that's part of desperation, believe me. But it still ends up, things work out for the best, and this one did.
They certainly have. And I go back to your time when you were at Arkansas, you're an undergrad, and you were a correspondent for the Arkansas Democrat Gazette.
Yeah.
What am I going to learn about the way you wrote that would give me an idea of your style as a journalist, or the way in which you like to get stories across?
Just find the thing that's the most compelling for you. sometimes I remember one time I'm writing a story for a paper called the Southwest Times Record, which is part of the Donnery Media Group, which I still don't know if they're around, but it was Donnery Media Group. And I remember that we had one game in which a high school scored 100 points. And I said, can you imagine 10 points in 3 minutes or 5 minutes, whatever it was? Can you imagine? And then I went through that. Yeah, well, imagine it happened. And so just by being able to do that, one of my stories was good. I grew up at a great time. I was able to write. I had my own little column, called Southern Gatherings or something like that. And the schools in Fort Smith were Northside High School and Southside High School. So I was doing Southside High, and it was fun. It was a blast. And I worked my way through college doing that.
So you worked through college there, undergrad at Arkansas, if I'm not mistaken, the master's at USC.
Yeah, best move I ever made.
Best. Why?
Why? People I got to know and the situation I got thrown in. I went and I worked as the assistant SID at Arkansas as well, the student SID at Arkansas, and I'm working for Coach Broyles, and he was amazing. And then I went to USC, and what the hell? I ended up with John McKay. I remember the first time I ever met Coach McKay. It was, this is a true story. I go in and Jim Perry, the SID, introduces me to Coach McKay and says hi. And for some reason, I wasn't scared of him. Everybody else was scared to pieces of Coach. I mean, it's 5'7" or 5'8", and he would walk, and people would walk out of his way,
Wow.
To do it. And yet, for some reason, he reminded me of my dad a little bit. My old man was like that. And so anyway, I went over to his office and I said, Coach, you got an interview scheduled with Lowell Schrader, who was at the Long Beach paper at the time. And he goes, I don't screw that kind of thing. And he said, I don't need to meet with this guy. And they said, and I said, yeah, you did, Coach. You promised him he'd be there. And so they go, right. And then they met with Lowell, which of course charmed him to death, which he had the ability to do. And the next day, USC, this is before computers, had lost my scholarship. And then I'm in the office of Verge Luberton, who's a business manager, and who ended up being one of the most important men in my life. And Verge said, Dennis, you got to calm down. It's good. It'll work out. And I left his office. Little did I know that Coach McKay was standing outside the door. And I remember he's the AD at the time, dude. And he sat there with his little cigar and he goes, Virgie, I like him. Find the money. And that's how I got my scholarship to be able to get through USA. Hell, I'm looking at going back to Fort Smith, and because I didn't, I wouldn't let my dad pay for it. So, I mean, we got into a discussion, quote unquote discussion about that.
For those, like you said, so many would have been intimidated. What was it about you that you weren't?
And that's the thing, is because I've met people scared to death of them. I have been, one of the things in my lifetime, I have been really lucky to have come across some people who accomplished great things. Everybody in your lifetime, Bryan, you will come across somebody, especially if you're interviewing people for a living. You'll go across somebody who's done something great. And you have to know, you may not realize at the time, but you're going to run across somebody who does something great. You'll recognize it, but they will.
Speaking of great, it would be hard, I would think, and we're joined by Dennis Kirkpatrick. I'm Bryan Fenley with Fox Sports Radio, to name a significant sporting event, one where you felt the most endorphins flowing through your body, because I would think every single one would be like that.
1974 USC, Notre Dame at USC. I can just tell you that right now.
Take me into your mind during that game and what was going on.
Well, the first thing it is that I had never experienced. I grew up. My father went to Notre Dame and played freshman football there, and he played varsity tennis, freshman football. And my father, I have a piece of the original Rockne Stadium, and it's somewhere in my stuff, because we're moving down here into Orange County, and it's somewhere there, but it's about this big, and it's a piece of the original stadium. So My dad, till the day he died, was a domer till the day he died. And the last SC Notre Dame game he saw was 174. Now you have to remember that that's where Pat Hayden threw 4 touchdowns, 2 of them to Johnny McKay, and AD ran the kickoff back in the second half and scored the other 2 touchdowns. But the kickoff happened, and it was just, it was Notre Dame USC, and then the kickoff happened. AD takes it up. Mario Salado throws a great block, and I have a picture on my wall of AD taking it back, and in it it's got Ricky Bell, Salado's in there, Ricky Bell, Dave Farmer played for Atlanta, and Anthony Davis. And it's where they threw the block and sprung him, and he went out. Anyway, the whole stadium goes nuts, and of course, me with my background have been the child of Notre Dame. My dad and I I went up on a recruiting trip.
Oh, wow.
They recruited me as a straight-legged kicker, which I was awful. Anyway, I didn't make it in academically, and my grades weren't good enough. I screwed around in high school and didn't do it, and that also fueled me with. And this is for later. That gave me enough ambition to be able to succeed. But anyway, when the kickoff happened, they go. The damn Coliseum never sits down in the second half. The place is wild, and that's the most significant. And I grabbed my boss, Jim Perry, who was the SID at the time, and I grabbed my boss, and we were sitting there. The only time I ever cheered in press box, ever, and which I did, and I still hate it when people do it today, but that was the only time I ever cheered. Period.
So when I hear your story there, I take the note where you said that you once were trying to be, a straight line kicker. And I think about your career wasn't exactly one in which it was a straight line. And it was more of the coming at an angle as a kicker. So in a way, it looks like that. But I wanted to ask you, as far as from a football metaphoric perspective, what position, when you're in control of broadcasts, how much do you feel like you're the quarterback in a situation like that?
It's all of it. It's the same deal. Now, I played quarterback in high school, and but it was, I could just throw the football, and that was it. And I had the athletic ability of a turnip, and I just wasn't meant for anything. But it was still, I feel you got to feel like the quarterback. You really do when you're trying to produce. Now, if you're a director, it's a different deal. Directing is a different genre altogether. You're looking to create constantly that, and as a producer, you have to create you have to create, plan, and execute. And those are things that are need to be done nowadays. With that, they're now combining so many responsibilities and so many tasks in producing that it's changing what you have to do.
It's changing, but knowing Dennis Kirkpatrick, he's adapting. And what I see from you, Dennis, is an ability to morph to the evolving landscape that is sports media, where you're taking on new challenges and you enjoy that. You have an appetite, a thirst for that, which is what brought you to the Big West Conference. And how is that opportunity stretching the way in which you've known the sports media business in a positive way for you, where you are able to grow personally, and then obviously secondarily the conference is going to grow?
The conference is poised for success. A lesson John Robinson taught me, and Coach McKay in a certain way, but Coach and Coach Broyle said it as well. But you see people working, is to create an environment for success. Dan Butterly is a perfect example of someone who can create an environment for success. And so I think that the conference is poised to do something big. It has 11 schools that people want to attend, if that makes sense. I mean, you go back east, and if somebody's watching Long Beach versus UC Santa Barbara, or Long Beach versus San Diego or something, they're gonna go, God, I'm looking at the great cheerleaders and great athletes, and I want to go there. And they do. I mean, they're sitting in Des Moines freezing their rear end off.
Yes.
And they're looking at somebody in Long Beach, who's straight out of the beach, and hey, dude, and they're going to want to go there. They just do. And you feel that it's, you got to have that. If you have that environment for success, you can paint that picture. These are really good athletes. Now, are they the best in the country? Maybe, maybe not. But it's also it's some of the best. So you're going to see that a lot. And people want to come to school here, and here by meaning the 11 schools of the Big West.
Speaking of the best, I think what the conference is doing is putting out some of the best cutting edge technology when it comes to broadcasting and the accessibility of everything and spreading the word and enhancing coverage. So what is it like from your perspective, seeing what the conference is doing in terms of being a leader when it comes to other Division I conferences in how you cover sports, how you get content out there?
How you cover sports, there are some rules that you have to follow. And let me show you something here real quick.
Sure.
This little puppy
Oh gosh.
is an ESPN Bible.
Oh.
Okay. Everything that they need done in there, the basics are in that book. All right. I met with the president of Long Beach State the other day, and we went down as a conference and staff meetings and everything. And we sat with the president of the university, and she goes, I think we should have a course called ESPN 101. And I raised my hand and I said, I've got a textbook for it. I've got experience as a professor. I'll see you in a couple of months, and we'll plan it out for all of 2022. And I'm serious. I mean, and here's my textbook. Okay, right there. I make about one a week for a member of the conference, and they all have it. And we had a meeting yesterday with that people. They tell you, hey, this is how you cover basketball. And so if you have the basics of telling a story, the biggest issue now is having the ability to tell a story. All right. I'm back in Fort Smith in 1969 as a newspaper reporter. Okay. Remember the game that reached 100? Find a way to tell that story. Talk to a young lady who was one of the head cheerleaders for Southside, died that year. And yet, how did I came up on how did I tell her story? I did it through the eyes of a preacher, of all things. So that you've got to do it. You've got to look to see what constitute a hero, what constitute a situation that's going to be. I read a series of kids' sports books that time. They were by an author named Claire B. If you're a basketball historian, Claire B. was one of the great coaches of all time. Okay, Bobby Knight is the Claire B. disciple, and but he came up with stories about how people do. So now telling these stories is what you take that and be able to do. And so that's the thing that we're challenged with now.
Dennis, the work you are doing in the Big West when it comes to writing a book, it might just be chapter 1 and 2 of where you want to be.
Oh, I can write a book about screwing up. I've done a bunch.
Stop it.
No, I left and I was offered the assistant SID job at USC in 1975, and I managed to leave it because the president of CBS at the time, Bob Wood, goes, if you're thinking about law school, then you ought to not hesitate and go. And his advice was right. It wasn't right for me, but his advice was right. What did I do? I go to the University of Arkansas to law school for a year, right? And remember what I told you earlier? You meet people who do something great. Remember we talked about that? My law school professor was Hillary Clinton.
Wow.
That was the year she and Bill got married in Fayetteville, of all places. Now, we're not buddies or anything. Don't get me wrong. But like I said, I had her for a teacher for a year,
How did she teach?
She's good. She's one of those people, when you meet her, you go, God, she really is. I'm a huge fan. Sorry, I don't want to get political on this, but she's one of those people you meet and it's, she's really special.
Dennis Kirkpatrick, special as well. You talk about college football coaches having a pipeline. There was also the Dennis Kirkpatrick pipeline with all of his mentees. It's exciting to see. It has been an honor, Dennis, to have you on. I'm Bryan Fenley with Fox Sports Radio. Dennis, thank you so much for your time and coming on.
Again, I've been lucky. I've also been one of the luckiest SOBs in the world. I really have. I was able to be a reporter at CNN for 6 years, although I had my ability was zero on camera. But like I said, I Nick Charles and Fred Hickman were above me, anchor. People that were there. Bill McPhail was my boss. Bill McPhail, the family that owned the Yankees, was there. They were my boss. I was really lucky to fall in a group called Prime Ticket in Los Angeles. I was one of the first people there. And again, I am lucky, And I mean, I got lucky in the girl I married.
Oh,
today's anniversary. I can say that. So,
from the very first line when introducing you, I said humility, and to the very end of this conversation, hearing those words you utter, all of that is your humility coming out. Dennis, thanks again so much.
Right? Take it easy, and we'll get together soon. All right. Hercules, great bar in Manhattan Beach.